Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a really big one, the value of a human being. It sounds simple, but it's incredibly complex.
It really is.
We've got some compelling sources, essays, stats, historical context to help us explore how human worth gets defined, especially now in the 21st century.
And our goal for you, the listener, is really to understand these, different voices, these different ways society measures value. We want to ask, is humanity evolving, or are we kind of devaluing ourselves?
It's a fascinating tension. You look back, you see incredible progress, horse and carriage to, well, space travel.
Right.
Our sources even point out, based on older figures, a ticket to the moon might cost something like $100 million. We've literally put a price tag on reaching the stars.
And yet, we still argue about the basic value of the person standing right next to us here on Earth. That's the paradox, isn't it? That's what we need to get into.
Okay, let's start there with the paradox. And maybe start with the money, because society often seems to measure things that way. What's the financial investment in a life?
Well, the sources give us a pretty stark number. Looking at figures from around 2009 as a baseline, it cost about $1.1 million for a typical American family to raise a child, birth through college.
$1 million. That's the investment side.
That's the investment. That's the price of entry, you could say, into a certain kind of life in the modern world.
So, okay, $1.1 million on one hand. Then you look at, say, the 2024 U.S. federal poverty level, around $12,000 a year per person. The gap is huge.
It's immense, and it forces that question, how do we measure value? If it's not just the money put in, is it wealth, position, smarts, athletic skill?
Logically, we'd say no, right? It shouldn't be those things.
Ideally, no. But that huge financial gap shows that, in practice, society often does operate as if those external things, especially money, are the main measure.
Yeah, you see that starkly with the extremes. Like the number of billionaires globally, what was it, over 3,000 by 2022?
Around 3,194, yes. Staggering wealth concentration.
And that sets up this really core question from the sources. Is a person experiencing homelessness inherently less valuable than a billionaire?
Ethically, spiritually, the answer has to be no. Equal value.
But the systems.
The systems we live in, healthcare, legal help, education access, they often don't reflect that equality at all. They often reflect wealth. Access is tied to money.
Which is maybe why the sources bring up this idea of the great equalizer.
Exactly. Death. If earthly measures fail, death doesn't discriminate. The sources use the COVID pandemic as a recent painful example.
Over 1 million deaths in the U.S. by early 2023. It didn't care if you were rich or poor, famous or unknown.
No, it didn't. It's a powerful reminder, isn't it? That concept of death as the equalizer. It sort of cuts through the materialism, showing that value based only on temporary things, well, it doesn't last.
So if death equalizes things in the end, why do we spend so much energy building systems that maintain inequality right up until that point? That leads us to systemic issues, right? Things that actively erode worth.
Yes, looking beyond individual choices to the broader systems. Think about global suffering. The fact that in 2021, you had around 828 million people facing chronic hunger.
That's not just bad luck.
No, it points to a massive systemic failure. A failure to distribute resources, a failure to recognize the basic value of every life.
And sometimes this gets justified by that phrase, the end justifies the means.
Right. The sources bring up that biblical story of Esau. He trades his birthright, his future inheritance, for a bowl of stew because he's starving now.
He says, what good is my birthright if I starve?
Exactly. He devalued something long-term for immediate survival. The worry is that this same thinking, sacrificing core values for short-term, often material gain, happens at the highest levels now.
Which connects to the political system. The cost of just running for office is enormous.
It is. Running for U.S. president, the sources note, could cost anywhere from $700 million to over $1 billion. And when the barrier to entry is that high, financially, it changes things. The concern isn't necessarily about bad individuals, but about the risk baked into the system.
How so?
Well, if you need vast sums of money to get elected, where does that money come from? Often from interest groups, big corporations, and they expect something in return, right? Access, influence. It potentially compromises the leader's ability to prioritize, the common good over financial backers.
So the system might end up filtering for wealth or access to wealth rather than maybe integrity or the best ideas.
That's the risk highlighted in the material, yes.
And with billions of people competing national interests,
Yeah.
is escaping that cycle even possible?
It's incredibly difficult. But history also shows moments where life was horrifically devalued and then reaffirmed, often through sacrifice. Look at the American Civil War.
Hundreds of thousands dead. Americans killing Americans.
Between 620,000 and 750,000 soldiers, estimates suggest. A terrible devaluation driven by political conflict.
But then you contrast that with something like the passengers on Flight 93 on 9/11.
Yes. A moment of incredible self-sacrifice. They saw a value greater than their own lives in that moment.
Acting to save others.
Embodying that idea. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. And the sources frame terrorism itself as the ultimate act of devaluation, trying to achieve goals by treating human life as worthless. A profound evil.
Okay, so moving from these large-scale conflicts and systems, our sources argue there's one asset that's fundamental, maybe the most valuable human asset, the family unit.
Yes, the family is presented as the core place where value is first learned and hopefully nurtured, but it's under attack from the very pressures we've been discussing.
Like financial pressure.
Absolutely. The data suggests material debt and financial hardship are major factors in why marriages break down. Somewhere between 20% and 40% of divorces cite finances as a key issue.
It creates a kind of trap, doesn't it? You work harder to earn money, which society says defines your worth.
But that very work takes you away from your family. It steals your time.
And the stats on that are pretty sobering. Mothers spending maybe 2 hours a day with their kids, fathers even less, maybe an hour and a half.
On average, yes. And that lack of time, that deficit, isn't trivial. The sources link it directly to negative outcomes for children.
Like what?
Mental health issues, behavioral problems, trouble in school, even delinquency, especially linked to father absence in some studies. So chasing material value can end up undermining the foundation of stability.
Which brings us to another modern pressure. Technology.
Yeah.
It connects us, but it also raises huge questions about value.
Definitely. There's the privacy issue first, feeling constantly tracked, watch GPS, cameras, online activity, losing that sense of private space.
And then there's the economic threat. AI, robots, displacing human workers.
Right. It's not just science fiction anymore. We're seeing automation replace jobs across many sectors. The fear isn't just about some job loss. It's about potentially making large number of humans economically redundant.
Redundant. That's a chilling word. If your labor isn't needed, what is your value in that kind of economic system?
It raises terrifying possibilities. Mass unemployment, homelessness, maybe a society split between tech elites and a low-paid service class. The sources literally ask, will robots be the bosses and humans the slaves?
And who's accountable for where this tech goes? That seems crucial.
It is. Accountability is maybe the biggest challenge with rapid tech advancement. Think about Einstein's work. Brilliant science, but it also led to the atomic bomb.
A tool for immense destruction.
Or research into viruses, it could lead to cures, or it could be weaponized as germ warfare. Who ensures scientists and researchers stay within ethical bounds when the power they wield is so immense, and the oversight sometimes struggles to keep up?
Feels like there's this huge responsibility that comes with knowledge and power.
Exactly. The principle of to whom much is given, much will be required applies just as much to scientific power as it does to wealth.
Okay, so we've looked at money, systems, technology, all these challenges to human worth. How do we pull this together? What's the path forward for us, for you listening?
Well, it seems to boil down to responsibility, both personal and collective.
Starting with leadership.
Yes. Demanding leaders who actually see their main job as, and this is quoting Jefferson via the sources, the care of human life and happiness, not just economic growth or corporate interests.
And that requires us, collectively, to choose what the sources call the path of truth for a better life.
Meaning
we have to speak up. If we see things that devalue life, if we see corruption or inequality, we have a choice. Be bold and speak up the truth or live in the lie.
And history gives us examples of people who did that, right?
Absolutely. Lincoln fighting for emancipation, Mandela challenging apartheid, Martin Luther King Jr. leading the civil rights movement, Mother Teresa caring for the poorest of the poor, including the unborn.
They all stood for inherent human dignity, often against incredible opposition.
And what seems common to them is that their external actions started from a deep internal conviction about human value.
Which brings it back to the individual. If we want to fix the big systemic problems, the sources argue, we have to start by truly believing in the equal inherent worth of every single person.
That old principle, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself.
It's foundational. If we don't get that internal measure right, no external system, no law, no policy is likely to fully succeed. The choice we face isn't some single big event, maybe. It's a constant daily choice.
Between what?
Between genuinely working towards equality in how we treat each other, how our systems operate, or just letting those material pressures that focus on wealth and status continue to erode things. And you, the person listening, you are part of that choice.
It means being aware, being critical thinkers, resisting that idea that your worth or anyone else's is just about money or possessions. That's the global deception the sources warn against.
Yes, knowledge is power here. Understanding these pressures helps us push back. We have to actively translate our values, hopefully, values of compassion and equality, into how we live, how we vote, how we interact every day.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into what it costs, in every sense, to be human, we want to leave you with one final thought from the source material, something to really chew on.
It's provocative, and it brings it right back to personal responsibility.
The person you see in the mirror will decide the value of human life.